The Center for Audit Quality presents Profession in Focus.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Profession in Focus. I'm Cindy Pernelli, the Executive Director of the Center for Audit Quality, and I'm very pleased to have as our guest today Peter Gleason, who is the CEO of the NACD. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Cindy. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here. The NACD has been a great partner with the CAQ over the years, and had the pleasure of working with you over the past 16 years as you've been at the NACD, but you're relatively recently new to your CEO role, so congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been about 3-4 weeks at this point, but you're right, 16 years at the company.
So it's fantastic. So we look forward to many more years of partnership and collaboration. So Peter, you talk to directors daily, several times a day. What's top of mind for directors? What keeps them up at night?
Well, I'll give you the big three. I guess there's many things that could keep them up at night, but I think the global economic uncertainty is probably the biggest one. And when I say global, I include the U.S. in that right now. There was concern about the regulatory environment pre-election and the tax environment pre-election, but I think those are still in flux here in the States. We've heard a lot about what might happen with the tax code, what might happen with the regulatory environment. But until we actually get some definitive issues on the table, we just don't know. And I think that uncertainty has created some ripples in the marketplace. I think the second one is probably more along the lines of the disruption side of the equation, both from an industry standpoint, could my industry be disrupted and therefore it have an impact on my company, or could my company be impacted by something new in technology that may take me out as in my market position. And I think the third big one, which everybody talks about, is cyber and cybersecurity, cyber threats in general, and how that may impact companies as we continue to see not only the threats morph, but what the perpetrators are after in terms of what the cyber attack is for. So.
Well, the NACD has been a huge leader in the cyberspace. You just came out working with the Internet Security Alliance in your 2017 handbook, Cyber
Right.
Handbook for Directors, and you've also just launched a new certification program for directors and others around cyber. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about both. The handbook we released, we did that 2 years ago, and this is the new issue of it. We did that in conjunction with the Internet Security Alliance, as you said. And we just did a press conference with the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security. Homeland Security's actually picked up the document. It's on their website. It's available to everybody for free. So that's out there in the marketplace, and we set out 5 simple recommendations for companies to adhere to help enhance their cybersecurity readiness. The course is the new piece of this equation that we launched recently. We did it in conjunction with Carnegie Mellon CERT and Ridge Global, 2 leaders in the field of cybersecurity. It's a virtual course, takes about 20 hours to complete, and upon completion and passing the exam that goes with it, you will get a certificate from Carnegie Mellon University in terms of your cybersecurity readiness.
And it's not just limited to directors, correct?
It's designed for directors. So we took the viewpoint of the director in the development side of the equation, but it is really geared towards the C-suite and the director community. And if you think about cyber, so much of cyber, as I said, the threats are morphing on a constant basis. So having that baseline of understanding as a director of, just the lexicon that your CISO may walk in and talk to you with, you've got to have that understanding in order to be, versed enough to ask the right questions, to understand the threats that are potentially coming against your company and what you're doing from an enterprise standpoint to fortify the company to combat those kinds of threats.
And how can people learn more about the course?
Obviously, you can go to our website. That's an easy one.
I'm giving you a plug. An opportunity to plug your website.
I'll take it. NACDonline.org, and I believe well, I'll just leave it at that. You can. It's right on the front of the website. You can't miss it. So. But we're really excited about that. We do think it's industry leading, and it's the first of its kind in terms of a program specifically geared towards directors. So.
Excellent. Well, more to come on that. So
yeah.
Good luck with that. But
Thank
it sounds
you.
like a very needed course and certificate. So,
Without a doubt.
So I appreciate that. And then the last thing I guess I wanted to explore with you, Peter, is short-termism. I know that in 2016, a survey was released talking about that directors are concerned about short-termism. You have had your Blue Ribbon Commission on short-termism. We've seen BlackRock CEO issuing a letter to CEOs, the S&P 500 CEOs, talking about the concerns about short-termism. So what can directors do to help management balance the need for short-term profits, if you will? Obviously, investors are looking for return on their investment sooner rather than later,
Right.
but also to take that long view that can help grow the company and make sure that the company's on solid footing.
Well, we actually took the opposite turn, and our Blue Ribbon Commission report was on creating long-term value as opposed to short-termism. And we're encouraged by, Larry Fink and Bill McNabb actually wrote a letter to all his portfolio companies encouraging the long-term aspects of investment. It really is, use the word balance, and that's how we started the approach when we started talking about this in our Blue Ribbon Commission. And what we quickly decided was it wasn't really balance, it was alignment. And you hit on the right issues of companies have to have short-term goals, create short-term profits, but there has to be an eye to the long term. And what are the long-term goals of the company? How are they articulated? And what is that alignment between the two, so that we are looking at both, not the balance between them, and could you weigh one more than the other, but they have to be in sync, and you have to be looking at the whole picture and doing this together. I think a lot of this comes down to strategy and how companies address strategy. What is the long-term vision for the company? Do you have, is your CEO an advocate for the long term in terms of how they are positioning the strategy with the employees of the company and the shareholders? That communication aspect is so critical. So talking about the long-term vision of the company, aligning the incentive compensation structures to long-term components. Now you have to have short-term components too, but if you leave out the long-term, what you're incenting is usually what gets done. So you look to the long term and having a component of the CEO and the management team compensation linked to the long-term goals, that they're not just the short-term objectives that they're trying to accomplish. So.
Right. Well, good food for fodder for all of us, regardless of where you sit in the supply chain.
Absolutely.
So, Peter, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, I really do look forward to working with you in the coming months and years. You're doing such great work at the NACD, so it's a privilege to partner with you.
Thanks, Cindy. So great to be with you.
And with that wraps up our latest edition of Profession in Focus. I hope you'll join us next time.